Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, fantastic. I'm Uriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. We're located in Ward 4 on Georgia Avenue at the Metropolitan Police Department's 4th District headquarters. I'm joined by the Chief of Police and members of the Metropolitan Police Department, as well as Dr. Jennifer Smith, who leads the district's Department of Forensic Sciences. The Chief is going to provide a briefing on the closure of several very important cases that impact, on a very beneficial way, public safety in the District of Columbia. He's first going to talk about a homicide closure relating to a missing person from last year, as well as the closure of a homicide that happened earlier this year in Riggs Park, and an additional closure of cases involving multiple shootings in the district. Chief.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. As you can see, thank you, Mayor, and you can see I'm joined with several members of the Metropolitan Police Department and Dr. Smith from our Department of Forensic Sciences. On April 28, 2017, Marty McMillan Jr., a 22-year-old resident of Landover, Maryland, was reported missing by his family. The family reported that Marty McMillan was last seen on April 23rd in the 2900 block of M Street Southeast. On May 4th, 2017, Marty McMillan's vehicle was located in the 5800 block of Field Street Northeast. And as additional information became available, we began to suspect foul play in this case, and the homicide branch took over the missing persons investigation. On October 30th, 2017, skeletal remains were recovered in the woods by the United States Park Police just off of Suitland Parkway at Forestville Road in Forestville, Maryland. Those remains were transported to the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner in Baltimore, Maryland. Following an autopsy, the medical examiner's office determined that the cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds to the torso, and the manner of death was determined to be a homicide. On January 9th, 2018, those skeletal remains were identified as those of Marty McMillan through dental records. Homicide investigators were able to determine that Marty was shot and killed in the district inside of an apartment in the 2600 block of Martin Luther King Avenue Southeast. And they were able to identify the person who was responsible for his death and the disposal of his body. Earlier today, pursuant to a D.C. Superior Court booking order, members of the Metropolitan Police Department's fugitive unit transported 40-year-old John McCrae of Southeast D.C. to the homicide branch, where he was charged on an outstanding arrest warrant with second-degree murder while armed for his role in the shooting death of Marty McMillan Jr. The case was brought to closure by Detective Dwayne Partman and other members of the Homicide Major Case Unit. I also like to thank the Park Police, the FBI, and the Baltimore Office of Chief Medical Examiner's Office in helping us close the case. As the mayor mentioned, I also want to talk about a closure we had this past weekend and the arrest of a man who's been charged with multiple shootings in our community. On January 12th, 2018, shortly after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, officers from the 4th District responded to reports of multiple shooting victims inside of a residence in the 400 block of Riggs Road Northeast. 3 gunshot victims were located, and they were all transported to local hospitals. One of those victims died from his injuries. That was 17-year-old Devon Fisher of Northeast D.C. This past Saturday, members of the Metropolitan Police Department's Capital Area Regional Fugitive Task Force located and arrested Shelby Jones. He's a 17-year-old of Waldorf, Maryland, pursuant to a D.C. Superior Court arrest warrant, where he will be charged as an adult with first-degree murder while armed. This case was brought to closure by Detective Richard Rice, and other members of the homicide branch. Lastly, an additional arrest was made this morning in connection with multiple shootings that occurred in our community in February of 2017. On March 15th of this year, a D.C. Superior Court grand jury indicted Derek Turner in reference to 3 shooting offenses that occurred in the district. 2 weeks later, Turner was arraigned before the Superior Court for the District of Columbia on numerous charges, including 7 counts of assault with intent to kill while armed. Earlier today, pursuant to a booking order, Turner was transported by members of the Metropolitan Police Department's fugitive unit from D.C. jail to MPD headquarters, and he was booked in reference to these shootings. Derek Turner, 26 years old, of Southeast D.C., has been charged with the following offenses: the February 16th shooting, 2017 shooting of a 28-year-old Southeast man in the 700 block of Congress Street Southeast, the February 17th triple shooting in the 3600 block of 6th Street Southeast, and the February 22nd triple shooting in the 900 block of Alabama Avenue Southeast. I want to thank the Department of Forensic Sciences for the forensic work they did in these cases, which tied all of the cases together. Additional details regarding the specifics of those shootings will be made available by way of press release. As you know, combating violence, removing illegal firearms from the District of Columbia, and dealing with repeat violent offenders in our community are the 3 things that we are trying to do here on the police department, and we can take any questions that you all might have. I'm sorry?
You said you took him from jail for booking, so he was already locked up for something.
He's already in jail pending a homicide charge.
So he shot people in 3 different...
Including the homicide he's charged with. There were 3 separate incidents in February of 2017 in which he was arrested and charged today.
What can you tell us about Marty McMillan, that case?
That was a case where Marty was reported missing. When he was reported to us, he had been missing for about 5 days. Family was very, very concerned. As I said, we later located his vehicle up in Northeast in D.C. We began to think, because some of the things that the family was telling us, that foul play may be involved in the case. Unfortunately, when we did find him, Park Police found him out in Maryland. He was deceased.
Do you have any idea what led to this?
Most of those specifics will become available when you read the court documents. I just don't want to talk about them here at this point.
So, Mr. McRae was in custody on the prior drug and gun charges related to the same search?
Mr. McRae?
Yes.
He was already in custody, yes.
And so, do you believe that he had any accomplices? Is this case closed now, or do you think there's still other accomplices?
The case is closed. We will be looking for additional suspects in the case.
So
We'll continue to look for additional suspects.
Beyond Mr. Wallace and Ms. Davis?
I didn't talk about those folks here today, but if you want to go ahead and talk about them, you're welcome to do that.
In the court records, Ms. Davis gave testimony to the inspectors that not only did Mr. McRae shoot and kill Marty, but Mr. McRae's brother helped him dispose of that body out off of
and all of that information will be looked at as far as our investigation is concerned.
Ms. Davis gave that interview to your detectives back in December and pointed the finger at McRae. What had to go into that over the last 4 or 5 months to get this arrest warrant?
You know, gathering information in any homicide case requires a certain level of preciseness and carefulness. When you're going to take someone's freedom away for a homicide, which has substantial penalties, you got to make sure that you have the appropriate evidence to proceed, and that's exactly what we did. We worked with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We had some of our best investigators involved in this case, and thankfully today we were able to come up with a closure.
What would you say? I mean, the family's been waiting almost exactly a year now for this closure. What would you say to the family?
First of all, I'd like to express my condolences to the family. This is, a young guy who was murdered in the city. I have actually talked to his grandmother. She was devastated by the loss of her grandson. This is a kid that she loved, as you can imagine. So I'd like to express my condolences to them. When I spoke to her on the phone, I assured her that we would do everything we possibly could to bring some closure in this case, and we're not going to finish this case until everybody who is responsible is held accountable.
I know that the family has been very critical about the police department's role in the case, saying that there's a lack of urgency in the case. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, that was one of the conversations that I had with his grandmother, because she did believe that initially that the police department had not exhibited the urgency that she had wished. And the conversation that I had with her was that we were going to do everything that we could to make sure that we brought some closure to her and her family.
Can you tell us anything about the weapon that Marty had that night, if that was the gun that was used to kill him, or if he had it on him?
Yeah, now, when we get in the area evidence, I want to be a little bit careful about that, because I don't want to say anything that might negatively impact the case. So I'm not going to comment at this time about that. But I think you'll see some of that when the court records become available.
Do you know when he will be arraigned on the new charge of murder?
He should be arraigned today, provided everything works as it should.
Tell us a little bit more about the Ridge Road shooting. I'm real close to the Fisher family and the 17-year-old who got killed. I like to close on that case.
Yeah, the mayor and I were up there that day. You could tell that the community was extremely disturbed by that loss of life. It was one of those cases that happened inside of a home. Sometimes those can be particularly difficult to solve. So I just want to say, the efforts of the homicide detectives in this case, they went above and beyond to be able to bring this. And this is another young person that was responsible in the case, a 17-year-old, but he will be charged as an adult. So to the extent that can bring you or the family some degree of closure, we're hopeful that it does.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can I ask about something else?
No.
Well, I'll wait.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
There's some interest in the hate crime in the U Street area. Video was released. What can you tell us about that?
I think we've all seen the images of the attack. It looks like an unprovoked attack on two adult males in our city, particularly violent. We have some images out there. The images that we've all seen, I think, are good enough where somebody may be able to identify the suspects in this case. That type of violence is the type of thing nobody likes to see happen in our city. I'm very optimistic that someone in the community is going to let us know exactly who those folks are so we can hold them responsible for that assault.
And I heard that there's more violence generally in that area. And is there any concern about, let's say, more patrols in that area, I guess particularly at night?
The area,
Street and 12th and that.
we have a lot of resources that are down there, but also there's large crowds down there. And so from time to time we have assaults that take place in the area. If you look back at that area as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, I think most people would tell you that there was a lot more of those assaults than you see today. Our nightlife units have been doing a really good job of controlling a lot of those issues that occur. And I think the second piece is as when something does occur, like happened the other night up there on U Street, we all have to collectively do something to make sure that the people that are responsible are held accountable.
You have numbers of bias-related crimes that exceed what it was in 2016. It was like something like 60 more hate crimes that you had registered. Do you have, number one, any reason why you think these crimes have gone up? And number two, how many have actually been prosecuted?
I don't have the data on how many have been prosecuted. We can get back to you on that. But there has been increases in hate crimes in the city from 15 to 16 and 16 to 17. It's hard to say exactly what the increase is due to. We have, as you know, a special liaison unit that deals specifically with incidents involving hate crimes against underserved communities that will interact with those communities, try to gather information. You know, this is Washington, D.C. This community does not tolerate those types of crimes in our city. So if you want me to get you the information with regards to prosecutions and success that we've had in those cases, I will. I think one of the things to note about the hate crimes is that most of the increases in our hate crimes are increases against property and not necessarily against persons. That's an important thing for folks to know.
Is this most recent incident classified as a hate crime?
It initially will be, and then it'll be given a further review. So for this particular case, we have information to suggest that some homophobic slurs were used during the course of the assault. That information was given to us from witnesses. For those of you who have seen the video does not have audio that captures that particular information. But if it is a hate crime, we will proceed with that particular charge once we bring the person into custody.
Chief, is there any evidence yet about where the victims may have been coming from before that? The reason I ask is that people in the LGBT community are worried that hostile people might be observing people leave a gay bar and then follow them and do something like this.
Yeah, we don't have that information at this point, but as soon as it becomes available, if that's something we can share, we will. All right, thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chief.